Welcome back again to part 4 of our interview for the divorcemagazine.co.uk. I'm Soila, and today I'm the founder and editor of the divorcemagazine.co.uk. And today I have Dr. Laurie Biseby, who's a relationship expert, and she's been talking to us all about infidelity, adultery. Can a marriage survive infidelity? Can a marriage survive adultery? And, how to know if your partner is cheating. Once a cheat, always a cheat. Is that really true? And you made me do it. We've talked about a lot. So do go back to part 1, 2, and 3. And all the videos are on YouTube or on the divorcemagazine.co.uk, and find out and listen to what it is that Dr. Bisby has to say. I was just saying to you, Laurie, that I feel like I would like to get into your head and sit there and just read all this like a book, because you've got so much information and it's so valuable, around this intimacy and relationship and adultery and fidelity. You've been doing it for quite a while. So now, one of the things that I would like us, to talk about, we've just finished talking about pornography and the role it can play, or it plays, both negative and positive sides in a relationship. But if somebody, I come to you or somebody comes to you and they're getting married, and they really and they know that infidelity is a real deal breaker for them. And they want to know, how can I avoid infidelity or adultery coming into my marriage? How appropriate a song is that?
And I actually thought that the sound was off, but clearly it was not.
Actually, mine isn't. If it rings, I'll have to jump up and go get it. But yeah, so how can is it possible to avoid it?
I mean, I think it is. I think it's not impossible to avoid it. Is a foolproof.
Uh-huh.
Life happens, so people do. But I think it is possible to do things that make it far less likely. And the first is to make sure that you're really clear as an individual and as a couple. What constitutes infidelity? Is it that I'm having an intimate conversation with a man and I'm sharing things with him and not with you anymore?
Yeah.
Is that infidelity? Is it infidelity that, pardon me, that I have full-blown sex with somebody, but I don't have a relationship?
Or that I kissed a guy in a club?
And I kissed a guy or I kissed a girl in a club.
Mm-hmm.
Is it infidelity? Because one of the areas that we haven't talked about is what role sexuality plays in this. And certainly sexuality is far more fluid than we've been led to believe.
Mm.
And people, because of the exposure to on the internet to all sorts of information, people are far more willing to experiment than they used to be. So there's quite a lot of infidelity that I've seen in couples that are about same-sex infidelity.
Mm.
So it isn't about I've gone and I've found another man that I've been involved with, but it's about I've always wanted to see what it would be like to be with a woman, or I've always found women attractive, but I wasn't willing to act on it. And now I was in the situation where I acted on it. Far different. And the issues might be far different with that. My male partner's response might be far different. They may respond far less to the dishonesty and far more to, the fact that it was a woman and not a man. So, I mean, that's a whole separate set of issues.
Yeah.
But you need to be really clear about that for yourself and clear with your partner. So one of the ways to avoid infidelity is actually talk about it before it happens. Talk about what's important to you in your relationship. I always tell couples that, I know there's some churches require premarital counseling. Yeah. Usually a fairly short thing, but at least they're requiring something. Yeah. I'm always amazed at how little time people spend talking about their relationships, talking about sex, talking about what would infidelity be, what are your deal breakers?
Yes.
If lying is a deal breaker, your partner needs to know that. You need to talk about what that means. You need to talk about how to avoid lying. Yeah. People avoid infidelity when they actually begin to notice when the level of intimacy with their partner is changing.
And it does change, doesn't it? It does change. It's a normal transition journey of a relationship.
Well, if we don't do something to keep it going, it usually changes.
Mm.
I mean, you do get the couples who come in where sex is always fine, no matter what. They argue about everything else, but sex is always fine. But lots of couples come in and sex has
Gone out the window.
yeah, it's disappeared, or they're arguing about sex because one wants this and the other one doesn't, or so talking about these things it will lower the possibility of infidelity because you're still staying intimate with each other, recognizing that things change, being willing to negotiate about things. People joke about, well, you do the dishes and I'll sleep with you tonight, you know. If you do all of the house cleaning, I'll give you a blowjob. You know, I mean, it's just like, you know, it's funny because people get really surprised when I use sexual terms, but that's one of the problems. We don't.
It's true.
I recently was because I talk with teenagers too.
Okay. Oh, that's brilliant. Yeah.
Yeah, and do some not sex education, relationship education,
Yes.
with sex. But I remember this young person telling me that they were having sex education in school, and the teacher never used the word sex.
How did they manage that?
Relations.
Oh, okay.
2014. We're talking about relations. Never
Sessions.
said the word penis.
What did he say? Oh, she.
Male member. We might as well be in Victorian times. I mean, so you know, we laugh at that, but actually, it's quite serious. If you can't talk about what you want,
Yeah.
you're not going to
And
get it.
name it and name it. And we're told that even, with children, little children, it's just better to just name things as they are, as they truly are. There's no point of masking what it is. And actually, I think male member sounds a little bit, it's
Kind of scary,
it
really.
sounds like a weapon.
Oh, I mean, I love the whole, we don't talk about we don't learn how to ask for what we want.
Yeah.
Most of us have shame around the desires that we have. People don't recognize that everybody has fantasies.
Yeah.
Some of them are very far out that they would never want to enact.
Yes.
They don't learn to put fantasy into their sex lives. You put fantasy in by not acting something out, but by talking to your partner about it.
Yes.
They rarely talk about things. But at the beginning of relationships, we all seem much more confident.
Yes.
And part of that is about the fact that if this person walks away, you're not that invested in them yet.
Mm.
So as my sexuality changes, and I want to try and disclose my deepest, darkest secrets to you, but I'm married to you, and if you reject me, it means a lot more. And I meet this person over here that I don't know from Adam, and we're flirting on the internet. And so I say this really nasty thing. Because I don't care. If they go away, it's not a big deal. And they say, ooh, that sounds like fun. And suddenly you're moving towards infidelity.
Yes.
Without even, it's not,
Yeah.
some people it's planned. It's deliberate. And that also makes a difference in how people get over things. It's a deliberate infidelity versus an intimacy developed because of a fear in being intimate with their partner. Different story.
Yeah.
So part of the way to avoid it is to actually learn how to talk to each other about these things. Learn how to work on your relationship as you go along.
Yeah, and you say what constitutes infidelity, like you said, and then that review thing, I quite like that because I think as you get, and it was written also, I don't know if it was in John Gottman's book or if it was in The Road Less Traveled, about in the beginning where it's really very much about lust. You're lusting after this, but you want to sleep with them, and the sex is fantastic and everything like that. But the real marriage, the real relationship comes when you're actually looking at the person, not because I want to sleep with you, but you're looking at them and seeing this person, all their good bits and bad bits and everything, but you still want to be with them and work at it.
Yeah, and but there, you can also have fabulous sex then. My issue is that we never talk about that bit. We talk about, and we're really intimate, and now that's the real relationship and it's the adult relationship. Well, that can be lots of fun and exciting and intense too.
Yeah.
And you can lust after that person with all their lumps and bumps, and because you see the person inside, what you see. Do one of my favorite couples that I ever had the opportunity to spend time with, and it wasn't in a clinical setting, were in their 80s and still having sex.
Fantastic.
And it was the funniest conversation because I was in my 20s and I expressed surprise when I found this out. And the way that I found it out was it was a family member, and I walked past extended family, and I walked past the door in the day and I heard noises. And I was worried that something was wrong because it sounded like somebody was like not feeling well. And I mean, I was in my 20s, so I knew sex. But because they were in their 80s, I didn't consider the possibility that that's what was happening. So I knocked on the door to see what was wrong. And nothing was wrong. I got told to go away, and then we talked about it later. And people, it's like, yes, people do have sex. In the nursing home, it's a big problem.
Yes, I've had people who say that. Yeah.
It shouldn't be a problem.
Yeah.
Really shouldn't, but it is. It's considered a big management problem.
Yeah.
I have friends who work in those settings, and talking to them about what they see is hysterical. So that's the part we don't talk about.
Yeah. Yeah.
How do we keep this exciting? How do we make sure there's joy in our relationships?
Yeah.
How do we work through the rough spots? Because there will be rough spots.
Yeah.
I can tell you that one of the times in my life that was hardest for me was I had been put on steroids. I have systemic lupus, which is something I quite happily talk about, and I had been put on steroids for lupus on a fairly high dose, and I gained about 75 pounds.
Wow.
I was 130 kilos. 135 kilos, I think.
Wow.
Something like that. I didn't look like me. When I looked in the mirror, I also had the moon face from that. I don't know what I saw, but it wasn't me. I didn't want to have sex.
Yeah, true.
My then husband had real issues with that. He desperately wanted to have sex. Or so he said. He loved me. He wanted to still have a sexual relationship. I didn't want anybody to go near me. And it wasn't because I didn't want him. I felt disgusting. I felt horrible.
Mm.
I had to take that somewhere and work on that. I had found a way to lose weight even on the steroids. I found a way to deal with my feelings. I went to see somebody to talk about these issues. But that's not an unusual occurrence in relationships, and people don't talk about it.
Yeah, when you have a baby, your body changes and you're not feeling comfortable. You put on a few pounds, you're not feeling comfortable.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so it's not necessarily your partner doesn't want you. It may be you don't want you.
True.
You don't want you. Having sex is a real big problem if you don't feel comfortable with you.
Yeah.
So those are the sorts of things that people need to think about, work on. And even if you do develop a plan, it may go out the window because you're in the situation and you find out you feel totally different. I may say, well, infidelity is a deal breaker. And it happens and it isn't.
Yeah. Exactly.
Or it's not a deal breaker if you do this, this, and this, and it happens, and actually I'm having trouble getting through it.
I can't deal with it. Yeah. Yeah.
So there's a degree of learning to be flexible and keeping the ability to communicate present and knowing who you can trust outside of your relationship to process things.
Yes.
So that you can then bring it into the relationship and work in the relationship.
Yeah. Okay. We'll go into our final part because I can see we only have like a minute, and I want you to be able to tell people where they can find you.
Yeah.
And also just anything that you can give as a piece of advice for somebody who's going through or has just discovered infidelity in their relationship, and they're trying to, what would you say to them?
Okay.